So today, it's a privilege. I was going to say an old friend, a friend of a long time. Professor Bassam Tibi will be speaking today on Islamist anti-Semitism as the new anti-Semitism. And it's really, as I said, a privilege that Bassam is here. Bassam is a professor emeritus of international relations at the University of Göttingen. He taught at universities in many places around the world from 1973 to 2009. He was born in Damascus, and he proudly claims and asserts his identity as a descendant of an old family.
No, it's not a claim. There's a history of the city of Damascus, and the title of the book, Mukhtarat Tawarikh Dimashq. It is 800 pages, a book in handwriting, and it was first printed after the introduction of the print into the Arab world, 1928. I was not born yet in Damascus, and there's a big chapter about the famous families of Damascus, and there are 17. And on the top of them, there are two. One is a power family. This is a family of Al-Azam. Yeah? There's a very famous Israeli professor, Rabinovich, who wrote his PhD on the family Al-Azam. The first president of Syria is Khalid Al-Azam. And these are the people in power. Yeah? And the people who are in knowledge, this is my family. Yeah? And the book says the muftis and the qadis of Damascus, and these are the ashraf, aristocracy of Damascus, they are from the 13th century through the 19th century, exclusively from my family. So I grew up in this family as a conservative Muslim, and I came as an anti-Semite to Germany. And the first two Jews I met in my life were Adorno and Horkheimer, and they changed my life. And I'll tell you more about this later. Yeah, okay.
So that's one narrative I'm not going to mess with. All right. So we're really honored that Bassam is here. Bassam was the Resnick Scholar for the Study of Anti-Semitism at the Center for Advanced Holocaust Studies in the United States in Washington. In 2011, he was chosen as a visiting Koret Foundation Fellow at Stanford University. He was a research fellow at Yale University at the Yale Initiative.
And he was my boss.
And it was thanks to our good work that we were closed down. So he was with us at ISGAP YISA at Yale. Professor Tibi has written many books, including Sharia and the State and the Arab Spring and Democratization, published by Routledge. And you can see in his biography, his list of many books and contributions and articles are really astounding, and he's a leader on issues of political Islam and issues of anti-Semitism. And I would also like to say, and I've said this earlier, that the role, I would argue, of a true scholar is to shed light where there's darkness. And Professor Tibi really, I think, embodies that and has done this throughout his career at putting his personal safety and security at risk in shining light where there's darkness, and being really a critic, an outspoken critic of the reactionary social movements and the dogmatic movements that come from our area, our home area, where people objectify the other and preach genocide. And Bassam, throughout his career, has been standing up for basic human values and democracy. So it's really, really a privilege that you're here, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Charles. The first question, first statement, and it's based on evidence. I was for 10 years major commentator on Islam and the Middle East in the major German TV channel ZDF, Zweites Deutsches Fernsehen, for between 1990 and 2001. And there I learned how to keep the time. And then I spent 18 years at Harvard from 82 till 2000, and there I learned how to keep the time. As a German professor, you can talk as long as you can, yeah? And nobody could stop you, because then you are insulted and leave the room. And in Harvard they say, if you don't keep the time, we assist you to keep the time. And the chairperson comes and says, please stop talking. Yeah, and so I'll keep the time. The first question: how much time do I have? It's now 10 after.
Right, so we have a tea break at 3:30.
3:30?
So we'll reconvene at 4,
Okay, so I can talk till 50 minutes.
if you wish.
If you wish, okay. All right. So first to keep the time, and then how to proceed. Yeah. My first lecture at Harvard was in February '82, so decades ago, and I was so nervous when I was there, and I prepared a written lecture, and I read it like a German professor. Yeah. And the chairperson at the time, he was. He's a European Jew. You know him in person. He's still alive, and he's one of my closest friends. His name is Herbert Kalman. He's a Viennese Jew, and he literally escaped the death of the Holocaust. Yeah, and became big professor in Harvard. And at the time we met, our first encounter, he said to me at dinner. In a faculty club, in Harvard Faculty Club, Kingsley Street, number 5. Yeah, Professor Tibi, we know of your Middle Eastern background. You are from Damascus, but you speak and behave like a German professor. Why? And I said, what do I do? He said, no anecdotes, no jokes. You read. You have. He said, but this is the way we handle it in Germany. And then he said, then you go back to Germany. Yeah. And then the second thing, the second step, that was the first step, and the second step was, what are your policy recommendations? That was a purely academic, dry lecture, but what are your policy recommendations? And I told him, well, I am professor since 10 years, but I never learned that. He said, but in America you have to do it. So my lecture will be in free speech, number one, and I will include as much as possible anecdotes and not jokes. I'm not a joke teller, but if there's the joke has to fit. You know, it is a speaker, a serious speaker is not a joke teller. Yeah, but you say you have to watch your audience, and you see they are about sleeping. You have to wake them up. Yeah. Okay, and then the second thing is I mix academic knowledge about anti-Semitism with personal experience and also with policy recommendations. So the first thing is the statement of the facts. Yeah, the fact is there are three kinds or three patterns of anti-Semitism today. You have the right-wing Nazi-style anti-Semitism. This is the old anti-Semitism, number one. And number two, you have the new anti-Semitism. What that is, I'll explain it more. The term new anti-Semitism is from a Jew. He's not a survivor of the Holocaust because he was in England. He was in London, and then left to Oxford, and left to Princeton. And I have more to tell you about. He passed away last May in the age of 101, 12 days ahead of his birthday. Yeah, and he was a great person. Well, they are. I don't know. I mean, this is well, one has to be difficult because some people say I'm not anti-Semite. I have Jewish friends. Yeah. So, but when I tell you, I mean, most lights in my life, yeah, are Jews. Yeah, academic teacher, but not exclusively, but maybe 70%. Yeah. And one of them is Bernard Lewis. Bernard Lewis is not only a friend but a mentor. So the term new anti-Semitism originates from his work, and what that is, I'll tell you later. And then you have the left-wing anti-Semitism. I came as a conservative Muslim, very conservatives, to Frankfurt, and then in the 60s. And then you remember those who, you are too young to remember this, but you know this, in the 60s there was a revolution in Europe, a student revolution, and I was one of the leaders. And because I came as a conservative and became a Marxist, I was for 10 years a Marxist and leader of the students at the time, and third world prophet. Yeah? And it was the new discovery of the Europeans. The liberation comes the third world, or was third world prophet for the Germans. And my generation, we were all, because our teachers, this not only teachers, they were our gods. And believe me, those who are believers, I ask you for apology, yeah? But I am a believer, but it's allowed to use, it was maybe politically not so correct language, yeah? But for me, Adorno and Horkheimer are like gods, yeah? Intellectual gods. So how can you be anti-Semite if you have something to orientate yourself about work, etc., who's a Jew, then you cannot be anti-Semite. So my generation was definitely 100% free of anti-Semitism. But the new left in Germany, but also in Europe, they are to 95% anti-Semite. And I'll talk more about this. So you have these three kinds of anti-Semitism. Nazi, right-wing anti-Semitism, the left-wing anti-Semitism, and the new anti-Semitism. But I'll talk about all three of them, but the focus will be on the new anti-Semitism. There are many sources of research and orientation, the practical and intellectual. I lived and worked in the past 40 years in 22 different Islamic countries. And I did my field work there. So my knowledge is not based on New York Times. Like there are experts on the Middle East in the United States who speak on CNN. They read in the morning CNN, and in the evening they talk as an expert on the Middle East. This is not my cup of tea. Yeah. Okay. So in French, the best term for that is in French. I speak five languages. So one of my first foreign language is French. Sur place. If you go, you do sur place. In German, Feldforschung. In English, field work. Yeah. So my knowledge is based on that. But there are intellectual sources. And with regard to this lecture, there are two persons who played a central part of my life. One of them was a friend. A mentor who became a friend, Bernard Lewis, and the other one is a lady. And see, I grew up in the Middle East, and in the Middle East, a real person is a man, and a woman is second class. Yeah, but for me, one of my intellectual sources is a lady, and the name, she's a Jewish German lady from Hanover, Hannah Arendt. Yeah? How do these three different patterns of anti-Semitism deal with the issue? About Nazis. I met Nazis and I talked to them, and the Nazis, they are, I mean, some of them are dishonest, but most of them are honest, and they say, we hate the Jews, we want to annihilate them, they are an evil, and so they say what they think. So you know, in German say, Sie wissen, woran Sie sind, yeah? So you know what's all about, yeah? When it comes to left-wing anti-Semitism, left-wing anti-Semites, they deny the accusation. You say, we are not against the Jews, we are only against Israel, yeah, and against the Jewish lobby in Wall Street, etc., etc. But this is enough, yeah. Then and the Islamist anti-Semitism has two discourses, yeah. We are here in Oxford, and there's an Oxford professor who is now in jail in France. I'm so happy about that, yeah. In public, his name is Tariq Ramadan. Tariq Ramadan, but this was on the internet. I have to be very careful in my phrasing. Tariq Ramadan says Muslims in Europe are the new Jews, and he say the Jews were victims. So, and he plays sympathy for the Jews, and say we are the new Jews. And so this is nothing wrong about that, but we say whether it's right or wrong, this is subject to debate. But now he's in jail with the accusation of rape, and his supporter and himself, they say he's a victim of a Jewish conspiracy, yeah? Because he has been critical of Israel, so the Jewish conspiracy was developed to say this is about the rape. This is a subject for the justice, not for myself. But you see, Islamists who are anti-Semites, they have two discourses. And I lived and worked and prayed with the Islamists in 22 Islamic countries between Morocco and Indonesia. When they speak to the public, they have a discourse. When they speak among themselves, they have another discourse. And therefore, this is double speak. There's a book about Tariq Ramadan by a French lady. Her name is Fourier, and the title of the book exists in English translation, Tariq Ramadan and the Double Speak. So, I mean, here, some Islamists, they say we are against the Jews, but distinguished leaders who are more sophisticated, they say we are not the Jews, we are against something done by the Jews, but we are not against the Jews, and then you have to be careful. So you have not to take at face value what you hear on statement verbally and written. Yeah? Now, Bernard Lewis on the Hannah Arendt. Bernard Lewis, well, maybe how I came across him. This is very important. This is the second anecdote. The first anecdote was from Harvard. The second anecdote is from Princeton. I was in 1984. I was at MESA, is the Middle East Association of North America. They have an annual meeting that was in the past. Now it's oh, okay, I have to be careful. Yeah. But in the past, you find 2,000 experts on the Middle East, from undergraduate students to top professor, and that was a market for knowledge about Islam and the Middle East. And I was at the time in San Francisco, and I had a dinner with the dean of the Islamic and Middle Eastern Studies at Princeton University. He's East European Jews, and his name is Yudovich, a wonderful person. And he asked me, have you been to Princeton? Well, he was my host and was his guest. Have you ever been to Princeton? And I said, no. He said, and you are a distinguished Muslim and you never been to Princeton? This is like being a Muslim who never been to Mecca. And I said to him, I'm sorry to tell you, I didn't go to Mecca yet. I want to do it, but I still have that. I'm not Hajji, but I hope before dying, I go to Mecca and I assume the title Hajji. And he said, then we will arrange a visit to Princeton. And I went to Princeton on my way back to Germany, and I had lunch with Bernard Lewis. The anecdote relates to the issue I'll be talking about. You know, there's a very famous Palestinian. He passed away 8 years ago. His name Edward Said. Edward Said and we are friends. And my first publication in English is together with him in a book, The Arabs of Today, Perspectives for Tomorrow, published 73. And I sided at the time, I sided with Edward Said against Bernard Lewis. Yeah? And Bernard Lewis asked me, started to talk with me, and I told him I am an honest man and I don't play games. He asked me, do you like to come and join us here in Princeton as a visiting professor? I said, but I opened my cards. I am a friend of Edward Said, and I have already published with him, and you should know that, and I know that you are enemies. Bernard Lewis and Edward Said were enemies, fighting wars on New York Times, in literary supplement of New York Times. And he asked me, have you read my work? I said, I'm honest, I have not read your work yet, except books. There's 2 volumes about classical Islam, but his recent work was not known to me. He said, then you read my work and then we talk, but I want you to come to Princeton, even ahead of reading my work. And I was appointed at Princeton University, and I started reading him and had dinners with him. And Edward Said says Bernard Lewis is the enemy of Islam. And Bernard Lewis says, I am an admirer of Islam. I am a great fan of Islam. And for me, as a Jew, Islam is a great civilization. And I read his book, which was published about the time when I was in Princeton, The Jews of Islam. And this is one of the sources of inspiration. And that's why the story. And later on, I disclosed my friendship to Bernard Lewis, to Edward Said, and that was the end. You see how tolerant some people are. Yeah. Okay. So Bernard Lewis says anti-Semitism never existed in Islam, but there is Judeophobia. He distinguishes between anti-Semitism and Judeophobia, but not so clear as Hannah Arendt does it. And he did not, honestly, he did not read Hannah Arendt because this is not his field. Yeah, The Origins of Totalitarianism. Hannah Arendt distinguishes between anti-Semitism and Judeophobia, and she says anti-Semitism is much more than Judeophobia. Judeophobia is a prejudice. There are people who do not like the Jews. There are people who do not like blacks. I mean, I say that this is not my language. Yeah, my language. Africans. I love Africa. Yeah, I was 6 weeks ago. I was in Senegal. Yeah, and I love Senegal is my beloved country. But there are people who do not like Africans, also in their language, the blacks. But they don't say all blacks should be killed. And though people who do not like Jews say I don't like Jews, but they do not say Jews should be annihilated. Anti-Semites, they say Jews are an evil and should be annihilated. So the difference between Judeophobia is a racism, is a prejudice. Anti-Semitism is genocide ideology. And I'm glad there is no such ideology with regard to Africa. But you have to kill all Africans to free the world from. But this exists in anti-Semite. They say Jews are evil, and the people should be freed from them through the annihilation of the Jews. Yeah, and so these are the two sources. Bernard Lewis and Hannah Arendt are basic to my thinking. Bernard Lewis now says in Islam there existed Judeophobia, but at the same time also there existed the opposite to Judeophobia. In Islamic Spain, this is a term by Bernard Lewis, there existed a Islamic Jewish symbiosis. He said they affected one another, Judaism and Islam, to the extent that some Judaic procedures, religious procedures, were adopted by Muslims and vice versa. Yeah? So you had both Judeophobia and mutual understanding between Jews and Muslims in early times. But this is history. Yeah? Today you have anti-Semitism. In the world of Islam, you have anti-Semitism. But there are also differences. I mean, there are 57 Islamic states, and you cannot generalize about all of them. I'm a political scientist by training, and comparative politics, comparisons are allowed, and on the basis of comparisons, you can make generalization. But the generalization has to be with substance. So I argue and the new anti-Semitism, together with Bernard Lewis, comes from the world of Islam. But the world of Islam is large. I lived in Indonesia. I was advisor of Abdul Rahman Wahid, 2003. He was president then. And in Indonesia, there is no anti-Semitism. This is the largest Islamic countries. Anti-Semitism is basically, I was in Senegal 6 weeks ago, and there's no anti-Semitism in Senegal. And 85% of the Senegalese are Muslims. The new anti-Semitism is in the Arab world, with the exception of Morocco. I can talk about this more later. With the exception of Morocco in the Arab world, plus Turkey and Iran. And I lived for 2 years in Turkey. I was professor in Boğaziçi University. I was also professor 2 years in Bilkent University. And the anti-Semitism I faced in Turkey was even tougher than the anti-Semitism of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Believe me, this is based on experience. So the new anti-Semitism is characterized by judging the Jews with different standards from others. Like you say, the Jews do that and that, but others do it as well. But the Jews are judged upon by different standards from others. And second, and the worst thing, the Jews are an evil. And they existed, there's an evil. And evil can be only eradicated, annihilated. And the new anti-Semitism is elaborated upon by Bernard Lewis in it was a lecture, but published, lecture 2005, published 2006 in the American Scholar. And Bernard Lewis, this is by Bernard Lewis and Hannah Arendt, The Origins of Totalitarianism. Yeah. Now, the history of anti-Semitism. Now, I focus now on the new anti-Semitism. I no longer talk about new Nazi anti-Semitism, and maybe a little about the left-wing anti-Semitism, because it relates to Middle Eastern anti-Semitism and to also the state of Israel, on which I shall be talk in more length tomorrow. Yeah. The history of anti-Semitism in the Middle East is older than the state of Israel. So those who say, like New York Times, that was an article by New York Times. This is not New York Times. Believe it, take it or believe it or not, but it's printed. Yeah, and the evidence. The exact evidence, you find it here in my book, Islamism and Islam, chapter 3. Yeah? They say this is not anti-Semitism, this is only a grievance, just expressions of justifiable political grievances. So anti-Semitism in the Middle East is justifiable by the standard of New York Times. And ever since I read it at the time, I do not read it. I do not buy it. I read it, but I do not buy it. I would not. It's not worth it. Yeah. But it now it's even worse. In the past 2 years, it worsened. It's so anti-Israel, and say, wait, it could be an Arab newspaper. Okay. So the anti-Semitism in the Arab world is older than the state of Israel. And much older than the Arab-Israeli conflict. The first document was published 1905 by a Lebanese person who studied in Paris, and his name is Najib Azouri, and the title of the book, written in French, Le Réveil de la Nation Arabe. And he says, the Arabs are the victims of the Jews. And to free themselves, Jews have to be annihilated. And on the grounds of annihilating the Jews, there could be a revival of the Arab nation. And then followed many things. And the top of this ideology is Sayyid Qutb. Sayyid Qutb published, he wrote a book, it's about 120 pages, صراعنا مع اليهود, our battle with the Jews. And this is the origin of this writing about 1928. There was no Israel at the time and no Arab-Israeli conflict. And Morris made the statement, I am a Syrian. I don't say I'm a Syrian. I say I'm an Arab from Syria. And say Arabs from Palestine. The term Palestinian was developed later. Yeah. And so Sayyid Qutb says the Jews are the eternal enemies of Islam, and they are enemies of Islam since the birth of Islam, since the 7th century. And this is, I mean, all these quotes, there's a chapter here in this book, Islamism and Islam, chapter 3, the Islamization of anti-Semitism. And also because this book here, you can have it for free from there, Global Anti-Semitism, edited by Charles Moll. and there's a chapter by me from Qutb to Hamas. Yeah, and because I was a Marxist in my young years, I can say, can you imagine a Marxism without Karl Marx? No. So because I argue there could be no Islamism without Sayyid Qutb. It is not Maududi, it is Sayyid Qutb. Sayyid Qutb is the pillar number one and the first intellectual origin of Islamism. Yeah? And the anti-Semitism of Islamism is fully elaborated upon on these 120 pages by Sayyid Qutb, Ma'rakatuna ma'a al-Yahud, our battle with the Jews. And he says, Jews are the enemies of Islam from the 7th century, and they prevent Islam from achieving its mission. Achieving the mission of Islam is supremacy over the entire world. And they say the Jews want the same, the Christians don't want that. They say, but the Jews are also the enemies of Islam, but there are two alternatives. Either a Jewish, but the term world order is not a Jewish term, it is a modern term. The Jewish world order, they could be either a Jewish world order or an Islamic world order. And therefore, there's zero-sum game, there's no compromise. Yeah? Either you or we. Yeah? And this is, I mean, this document is fearful. Yeah? And you see, I, as a former Marxist, I find more Marxist terms, and also Lenin. I was a Marxist, but never Leninist. You know, those who don't know the distinction. Marx was a humanist, yeah, a Jewish humanist, and I have a great respect for him. But Lenin was a Russian totalitarian, and so Marxism. It was very important for us in Frankfurt. You know, the student revolt. We are Marxist in the thinking of Adorno and Horkheimer, yeah, and we are against Lenin. And there was a Jewish German activist, Rosa Luxemburg. She was against Lenin, and she said, Freiheit ist die Freiheit des Andersdenkenden. Freedom is the freedom of people who think otherwise, and Lenin does not accept this. And so that we were against Lenin, and we were Marxist, and so free of anti-Semitism, and so on. But now to Qutb, to be Marxist is to follow Marx, and to be Islamist is to follow Sayyid Qutb. Yeah? But the terms used by Sayyid Qutb are mostly from Lenin. Like you see, Lenin makes a distinction between the proletariat, this is the working class, and the working class should make the Marxist communist revolution. And Lenin says, but the worker class are stupid. I mean, he does not use the term stupid, but it's my interpretation. They are stupid and they don't know. You just give them more wage and you make them silent. Yeah, but so therefore, by Marx, for Marx, only the proletariat could make the revolution, the working class. But Lenin says the party. So the avant-garde of the proletariat is the self-proclaimed Marxist leader of the proletariat, and this is what also Sayyid Qutb says most Muslims are, again, he does not use the term stupid, but they are sleeping and they don't know what's going on, and they don't know anything about the Jewish conspiracy against Islam. Only the avant-garde, these are the Islamists. They know what's going on, and they would lead the Islamic Ummah. The Islamic Ummah becomes the Islamic term for the proletariat. They lead the Islamic Ummah against the Jews. So the Islamic revolution, like the Marxist-Leninist revolution, is not against capitalism, it's against the Jews. Yeah? And then in this regard, I use the term Islamization of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is by origin European. The genocide ideology is European. Anti-Semitism does not exist in Islam, and with the authority of Bernard Lewis, I state anti-Semitism has no roots in Islam. It is imported. It is imported from Europe. At the beginning, it was alien. It was an import. but Sayyid Qutb was the person who provided imported Europeanized anti-Semitism authenticity, in Arabic asala. Therefore, I have a chapter in this book. This book is written at the center of Charles in Yale, and it's published by Yale, and also with an endorsement by Charles. Charles says Islamism ought to be essential reading for students and for you, he says. Okay. Okay, and then authenticity, to make European anti-Semitism authentic, you have to cover it with Islamic terms, and this is what Sayyid Qutb does. Yeah, and I will mention the 5 basic features of Islamist anti-Semitism given an Islamic authenticity. This is page 91 of the book. Let me find here, 91. The pillars of Islamized anti-Semitism can be summed up by a series of allegations. These allegations not by me, but the Islamists. Number 1, that a Jewish conspiracy against Islam has existed since 622. Since the move in the year 622, the Prophet moved from Mecca to Medina, and in that year, the enmity between Islam and Judaism started, according to them. Number 2, the Jews want to rule the world and thus deprive Islam of its own claim to rule the world. Number 3, the Jews employ a variety of secret forces, such as Freemasonry, to further their goal of world domination, the chief of these being Zionism. Number 4, that since the Crusades, Jews used Christians as their proxies. The falsification of history. The Crusaders were acting on behalf of the Jews. This is the Crusaders were acting upon the Jews, and the Christians are proxies of the Jews. Yeah, and finally, America is today ruled by the Jews, and that's why my academic teacher, Max Horkheimer, who at that time had absolutely no knowledge about Islamism, but he said, where is anti-Semitism? There is also anti-Americanism. Anti-Americanism and anti-Semitism are a pair, and we have them today, especially with the left. I am not, believe me, I'm not a fan of Trump. I think Trump should have stayed in New York as a businessman. He's better than business. He has he does not understand politics. He don't know how to behave as a politician. But anti-Trump becomes anti-America. Yeah. So I'm not defending Trump. Trump is not my friend, but America is my friend. Yeah. And European anti-Americanism is paired with anti-Semitism. I published an article last month in Switzerland. In Germany, I cannot do that. About now, Germany is allying with Iran and Russia against the United States because of the deal. Because Trump revoked the deal, but the Iranians are producing the atom bomb, yeah? And the 18 sites that can be expected are not where this is being done. And if you say anything of this, then you are a supporter of Trump. I'm not. Yeah? Okay. So this is anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism go hand in hand. Yeah? Now, what happens is in Europe is, and I spent the last 15 minutes talking about this. Anti-Semitism was in the Middle East was an import from Europe, and Islam and anti-Semitism are should be separated from one another. And the authority of this is a Jewish historian. And to me, Bernard Lewis was the best historian in the 20th century, yeah? the very best. Anti-Semitism was imported from Europe. And now the Middle Easterner are sending what they imported from Europe back to Europe. In the past 3 years, there was a huge increase of the Islamic diaspora in Germany and also in other parts of Europe, but particularly. And you have every day, almost every day, there are assaults on Jews in Germany, and it happens. I am Syrian, and I'm happy that Germany is behaving in a humanitarian way and providing Syrians refuge from the war. Syria is the hell, and I do not believe that the hell of Allah is worse than the real hell of Syria at the moment. Yeah, you cannot live in Syria. So when you leave Syria, if I were Syrian, I would leave. My family is killed. The whole country is ruined, but here also you have anti-Semitism. When talking with Syrians in Berlin, they say the Syrian army is commanded by Israeli officers. Yeah, but the Syrian army is commanded by Iranian officers, not by Israeli, and Russian and Iranian are there, and so. There's an increase of anti-Semitism in Europe, and this is, I call it zugewanderter Antisemitismus, imported anti-Semitism, and it's not allowed to talk about it. Yeah? The president of Germany gave an interview 3 or 4 weeks ago to the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. This is the biggest newspaper in Germany, and he acknowledged the increase of anti-Semitism. So this is which is positive. But he says, we know also that some of the cases are related to migrants from the Middle East. However, he says, anti-Semitism is a German problem, and anti-Semitism is related only to Germans. And so that means, but these new 2 million people who came in, they live in Germany, and they are a German problem. You see, this is a problem of the Muslims. Anti-Semitism in Europe is a problem of the Muslim, not our problem. This is a statement by the president of Germany. And there's the major Forscher, I'm sorry to see how German intrudes my English. The basic German scholar on anti-Semitism is Professor Benz from the Humboldt University in Berlin. And he said, and this is printed in New York Times, he said, if you accuse the innocent, if you accuse the innocent migrants of anti-Semitism, this is something bad, yeah? Because anti-Semitism is a German problem, and if you accuse Syrians, I am a Syrian, of anti-Semitism, then you are distracting from real anti-Semitism with this German anti-Semitism. I am not distracting from Nazi anti-Semitism. There is Nazi anti-Semitism, but I would say I lived in Germany for more than 50 years. I had 4 generations of German students, and I am proud to tell you that I never encountered a German student among my students who is anti-Semites. But in the past years, I had students with migrant backgrounds, and they are anti-Semites. So that means that the democratization of Germany after the liberation from Hitler barbarism bear some fruits. I mean, decline of is still there, but I would anti-Semitism is still there, and we accuse it. But maybe 5 to maximally 10% of the Germans are anti-Semites today. That this is a product of re-education that was after. In the 50s, re-educating the German in democracy, and re-educating the German in democracy means re-educating them against anti-Semitism. But among the migrants who came into the country in the past 2-3 years, at least 90% are anti-Semites. I myself was a tough anti-Semite when I came to Germany, and recently I was on German television and I said as an evidence, when I was a young boy, we were 4 kids, and female male kids and 1 daughter, yeah, my sister, yeah. But I was the eldest one and the strongest. And when we used to fight, and when I quarreled with my brother, so I was hitting them, and my mother came to separate us. And you know what my mother said? My mother is an angel, but this is the culture. It's not my mother. My mother said, "Shu hada Yehudi ben idek? Is he a Jew in your hands? Why you are hurting him?" Yeah. And my father was a terrible person. When I did things that are wrong in his point of view, he hit me physically, and he even injured me. And my mother was crying and saying, "Bassam is not a Jew. Don't stop killing him. Yeah? Bassam is mu Yehudi. La تضربه." Yeah? That means this is the culture. You see, I am not accusing the people who are coming from the Middle East, but I say they come from a culture of anti-Semitism. And there's a half Iranian journalist who writes in the site. She wrote, "Antisemitismus im Nahen Osten ist im Alltag wie trinken und essen." So anti-Semitism in the Middle East is normal as eating and drinking. And we have to acknowledge this. So I'm not accusing these people, but I say you have to deal with that. This is a German problem that you are introducing anti-Semites. And Karl Lagerfeld published an article recently, "Frau Merkel, ich hasse Sie." That was printed on front page of New York of the Bild Zeitung. "Frau Merkel, ich hasse Sie." Frau Merkel, I hate you. You kill 6 million Jews, and then you to forgive yourself, you introduce further million anti-Semites into your country. Yeah? So there is a new anti-Semitism in the world of Islam, basically in the Middle East, in the Arab Middle East, plus Turkey and Iran. In Africa, in West Africa, there is some anti-Semitism, but it is a minor phenomenon. And as I said, in Senegal, I did not meet one single anti-Semite. And in Indonesia, there is no anti-Semitism. So anti-Semitism is not only Islamic Middle Eastern. I said I'll single out one country, Morocco. I was professor at the Université Mohammed Sang in Rabat, and I used to go annually to Rabat, lecture, do research. And the last time I was in Morocco, it's almost 10 years. Yeah, 2008, I was in a conference at Fez, sponsored by the new king, Mohammed VI. And in the opening of the conference, I never experienced anything like that in an Arab country. Never, ever. The chairman of the conference opened the conference and he said, immigration et multiculturalism, immigration and multiculturalism. And he said, we're living in age and globalization, cultures come together, and we Moroccans, we have to acknowledge different sources of our cultures. And he said, we are Moroccans, we have a Moroccan culture, we are Muslim, and we have a Muslim culture, but we are also Berber. We are Berber and Arab. He acknowledged Morocco is not only an Arab state, it's a Berber state. And he said, الأصول اليهودية للحضارة المغربية. And they are Jewish roots of our Moroccan culture. And I said, am I hearing well? And I asked the person, did he say Yehudi? He said, yes. He said, الأصول اليهودية, the Jewish origins. And there is anti-Semitism in Morocco, but the Jewish community in Casablanca is quite safe. It's not like in Iraq or in Egypt. And that even the Christians in Egypt are no longer safe. So to summarize the last 5 minutes, I have only 5 minutes. Now, anti-Semitism is more than racism. Racism is a prejudice. Anti-Semitism is a genocidal ideology. And therefore, it has to be taken more seriously than Semitism, more seriously than racism. And I think to limit the meaning of anti-Semitism to racism is belittling of its danger. Jews live all around the world, but they are a minority, 35 million altogether? 15 or even less, yeah? So this, according my, but 15 million is 5 in Israel, 5 in the United States, but no, there must be more, yeah? Okay, but this is, a minority is a threat. And I am a friend with, not only with Charles Moll, but I'm a friend also with the Jewish historian Jeffrey Herf. We published last year a book under the title Antisemitism since Antisemitism since and after the Holocaust. Yeah, since and after the Holocaust is published by Palgrave. Among the reading you will find it there, and he says, and I follow him, if there were to be a second Holocaust, it will not be in Europe. I think it's absolutely impossible that something like this would happen in Europe. Europeans have changed, and Nazis of all colors in Europe are not more than 5. When it goes up, I think 10% is too much. Yeah? If there were to be a Holocaust, it would be in the Middle East. And now I have to disclose my sympathy for Israel. I am a Syrian, and we were taught in Syria since my birth. Our enemy is in Israel, but I'm a political scientist today, and I'm an expert in the Middle East. And in this capacity, I say the enemy of Syria is not Israel. The enemy of Syria is Iran. Israel exists with the support of the United States. European support to Israel is declining in a worrying way, because left-wing anti-Semitism is conquering European politics. So the safest place, there are 2 safe places for the Jews in the world today. One is in the United States and the other in Israel. Yeah? And therefore, I go for the protection of Israel, and I see a connection between the existence of the state of Israel and the existence of the Jews. And those who say in Europe, we are not criticizing the Jewish existence, we are criticizing Israel. But Israel is the Jewish existence, and therefore, and this will be the subject of my lecture tomorrow, the threat of Holocaust is looming. And I don't want to see this happening in the Middle East. I am a Middle Easterner, and to my Middle Eastern humanism belongs the protection of Jewish existence in Israel. I traveled many times to Israel and finished with this, and I established with Rabbi Albert Friedlander 1994 in the Westminster Synagogue in London, the Jewish-Islamic dialogue, and we continued this effort in Spain, in Cordoba, and after Cordoba we went to Washington, and I was the first Muslim to serve as a fellow for the study of anti-Semitism at the Holocaust Museum, Center for Advanced Holocaust Studies, and we published a book, and you are part of it, Encountering the Stranger. So for me, Jews, since my encounter with the very first Jew I met in my whole life was Herbert Kalman at Harvard University. No, I'm sorry. The first 2 Jews were Adorno and Horkheimer, and then in the United States, Herbert Kalman and Bernard Lewis. And when I go to Israel, I feel at home. And when I'm among Jews, my life in America was basically among the Jewish community. And I think Judaism is a luck for humanity, and it should be kept. Thank you for listening to me.
Okay, so thank you very much, Bassam. So we have 30 minutes for question and answer, then we'll take a tea break, and then you'll come back.
Okay.
And I would like to start off with a question. I'll try and be clear and concise, but when you were speaking about a pending Holocaust in the Middle East, I was thinking of Elie Wiesel when he said that anti-Semitism begins with Jews, but it never ends with Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And while you were talking about Israel, I was thinking about your homeland,
Mm-hmm.
where there's a genocide. I would call it a genocide. Some scholars disagree, but I would call it a genocide taking place in Syria as we speak. And I want to tie it to the issues of anti-Semitism. You identified three forms of anti-Semitism. On the left, in Europe, the Nazi anti-Semitism, the new anti-Semitism that Bernard Lewis spoke about in political Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about political Islamic anti-Semites
Mm-hmm.
is that they're clear, they're
Mhm.
consistent.
Mhm.
It's central to their ideology,
Mhm.
and sometimes they don't speak about it to the intellectual circles, but they're clear, consistent,
Mhm.
and upfront.
Mhm.
And I would like to speak about engaging the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm thinking of the Cairo speech of President Obama in 2009, and I'm thinking about the deal with Iran, which ultimately transferred resources that we know have been used in the destruction of Syria. So can you explain how intellectuals basically remain silent, how Western policymakers, perhaps for short-term gain, engage the Muslim Brotherhood, in some cases I would call it aiding and abetting, and even transferring resources to the Iranian revolutionary regime, movements that are anti-democratic, sexist, homophobic, anti-minority, and preach the annihilation of the Jewish people. What is taking place in our intellectual policy world?
I start with this. I was a critic for George W. Bush, basically because I was against the Iraq War. And I argue against the Iraq War not as a pacifist, but as a responsible political scientist. Yeah? My argument was if you go to war in Iraq, you remove a dictator, but then you strengthen the Islamists. And political Islam, we're talking about political Islam, will become more powerful after such a war. And I said this, I can disclose this without specifics. I was the only non-American in a team of 5 political scientists specialized in the Middle East who spent almost a week with the leading generals of the American Armed Forces. And it was 2002, someplace in the United States. I cannot be specific. And we told them, don't go to war. Yeah. And that's why I was against. And then when Obama came to power, I was happy. And then after, and I made this public. Like I have a book, Islam and Global Politics, in which the parts were written before Obama went to Cairo. We're all positive about him. Yeah. But he was in Cairo, and a good political scientist does not only read papers and books and go there, but you have to behave also sometimes like an intelligence. As a and I have my intelligence in Cairo, yeah? And from my intelligence in Cairo, I know that 15, my intelligence goes even to the office of President Mubarak, yeah? At the time, President Mubarak was in office. Through informal channels, Obama agreed that 15 leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood sit in the front row, listen to him. Yeah? And Mubarak was against it, but he could not stop it. When the Egyptian government was so angry and said, why is he doing that? Yeah? And then Tariq Ramadan was forbidden of entering the United States. Hillary Clinton issued a special decree. He was allowed to come and make propaganda throughout the country, yeah, for political Islam, yeah. And why? And then there is positive and negative explanation. The positive explanation is Obama is a good politician, and he wants to use the rift within Islam, political Islam, to defeat the jihadists. In political, the Islamism is not a general phenomenon. If you read this book here, they are peaceful Islamists and they are jihadist Islamists. And Obama wanted to use the peaceful jihadist against the peaceful Islamist against the jihadist to defeat jihadism. But this is one explanation. But the bad explanation is there's an ideology of French tiers-mondism, third worldism. I think everything that comes from the third world is positive, and we Westerners, Europeans and Americans, we are charged with colonialism, crusades, racism, and what have you. And the third world is free of all of this. Yeah, and that's why political Islam comes from the free world. From the third world, and that's why it's positive. And I don't know which one, but explain. But this is bad. And the worst things Obama did was the following. Yeah, 2015, the deal with Iran. I am an expert, and I know what I'm talking about. And if that what I'm saying is wrong, then my life, I was for 50 years expert on the Middle East, established worldwide in publications, 16 languages, appearance, etc. Then my life was a trash. Because, and I hope my life is not a trash. My life as an expert on the Middle East. The deal was like this. Iran allows international inspectors to come into the country and inspect 18 sites, 18 sites, but they have to register this, announce this 3 weeks ahead. And within the 3 weeks, they can remove all evidence, I mean, the Iranians. But this is not the worst thing. The worst thing is you have peaceful insights for developing uranium, and you have military insights. The military insights were all of them off limits, including those of the Revolutionary Guards. And to my knowledge, and my knowledge is solid, my knowledge is the atom bomb is being produced in the military sites and in the area of the and the 18 sites are piece of is nuts, yeah. And Obama says, he says, I mean, then I'm a believer, but you see, when I hear that, I saw him speaking in CNN, and he said in CNN, we do not trust the Iranians. I said, great, yeah. He said, the deal is based on suspicion, not on trust. But how can you trust people who are cheating you in this way? And I said, well, how could you, a person like that, President of the United States of America, yeah? And so this, I am highly critical of Trump, and I do not think Trump is a good politician. But canceling the deal was okay, and what Trump wanted is to reach a better deal. You know, like he was pushing in Korea, and finally Mr. Kim agreed to him, and so America will accomplish its goal in North Korea. And the same would happen. But what the Europeans said, Germany said, we will compensate the Iranians for the loss they get through the American sanctions. What a Western alliance is that? Yeah, and the German intellectuals, but also except my friend von Kiel-Kraut, Jewish philosopher. But he's a lonely man in the desert, yeah. But the major French intellectuals are anti-Semite, and the worst is in Germany. The French did not kill the Jews, but the Germans killed the Jews, and now they side with the enemies of the Jews against Israel and against the Jews. And the atmosphere in Germany is pro-Iranian and anti-Israel. And then Germany is allying with Moscow. With Tehran against Israel and the United States. This is a world upside down. I'm a political scientist, and this is not rhetoric, it's real. I do not understand world politics anymore.
And just to follow up, just to push it a little bit, why the silence on issues of human rights, of sexism, of this sort of the I don't know, the denial of the other, it wasn't even an issue on the table when the West.
Yeah, I think
with the
I have an
Brotherhood
explanation
or
for
with
this.
Iran.
There's something, you know, I came as a conservative Muslim from Damascus to Frankfurt, and with Adorno and Horkheimer, I read Immanuel Kant, yeah, and I read also Max Weber, and these to me, this is the big stars of European intellectual history, and you know. The philosophy, I mean, you are not philosopher, but let me explain. This is the answer to your question. Yeah? Kant says there are humans and there's the objective world. And knowledge is knowledge about the objective world. So the history of mankind is that we humans, colorblind, religion blind, humans, this was Kant was the first real non-racist humanist. The human has no color, has no religion. The human is the Mensch, yeah. We want to know the objective world, and he says the word for that in German, das Ding an sich. Das Ding an sich is the objective world. We try. The history of mankind is an effort to recognize the objective world, and Max Weber. This is the greatest sociologist of all times. Both are Germans. Max Weber used the term rationality and objectivism. Rationality is an effort to recognize the objectivity. And what happens today, but this did not start in France, in Germany. It started in France. It was sent to the United States. Postmodernism. Postmodernism and postmodernists say there is no objective world. Everything is a construction, and then there are no cultural differences. You see, I'm a Muslim, and I would not allow anybody to say anything bad about Islam. But I know in Islam, that's the way I grew up. In Islam, I'm a member of the Ummah. Ummah is the Islamic collectivity, yeah. And the greatest achievement of Western civilization is to define humans as individuals. And I learned, if you ask me in Damascus, who are you? And I say, I'm a Muslim from Banu Tibi. Banu Tibi is the aristocracy, 10 centuries old aristocracy of Damascus, and Muslim. But after my education in Frankfurt, I say, I'm a Bassam Tibi. I'm an individual. And now the cultural relativists, they abolish objectivity, introduce cultural relativism, and it's not allowed to criticize other cultures. Yeah? If you criticize other cultures, then you are a racist. But you see, in Islam, it is stated in the Quran, if my wife does not obey with me, فَضْرُبُوهُنَّ. It says, beat them. Yeah. Allah allowed me, entitled me to beat my wife, and this is my culture. Yeah. See, but this is against the law. Yeah. You cannot allow women. Men and women are equals, yeah? And so I think these things become now not only intellectual standards, but also political standards. And the Islamists, they come to Europe and introduce the Sharia with them. And Sharia does not exist in the Quran. I'm a student of the Quran. Allah mentioned Sharia only once in the Quran, and I can quote it, وَثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكَ مِنْهَا شَرِيعَةٌ بِالْأَمْرِ فَاتَّبِعُوهَا. We have given you a Sharia, this is morality, follow it. In the course of time, Muslims developed Sharia to a legal system, and the Islamists made of this legal system a political law, state law. And the Islamists bring this to Europe and say freedom of religion. And if you criticize me, then you are a racist. Yeah? But you see, this is the answer to your question. It's the intellectual atmosphere of self-denial.
Thank you. So, Matthias?
Yeah, thanks for your talk. First of all, I'd like to ask you if it's really helpful to use a category. I mean, as far as I know, new anti-Semitism is used to describe or to label Israel-related anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
And the secret success of Israel-related anti-Semitism is that it can combine, or that different groups, political groups, social groups, can come together with this concept of enemy against Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I understood you want to say that new anti-Semitism means anti-Semitism among Muslims and Islamists.
Islamist.
So it's, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's actually a shift of this descriptive category, isn't it, in your work?
No, I would maybe thank you for. I agree with you. Yeah. So I mean, there are circumstances. Yeah. For any social phenomenon, not only anti-Semitism is a political and social phenomenon, and these things do not fall from heaven. They are also not constructed. They are objective. And anti-Semitism is not a construction, like postmodernists would say. Anti-Semitism is a political reality, and I have experienced it. Yeah, but it does not fall from heaven. There are circumstances that produce groups that follow this. You are right, but I would to add to the unlike Bernard Lewis, I would add the anti-Semitism of the left-wing intellectuals. Yeah. To this new anti-Semitism also, but the circumstances of the left-wing anti-Semitists in Europe are different from those of the new anti-Semitism in Egypt, for instance, or in Turkey. Yeah? The conditions are different, and the underlying concerns are different. But then, unwelcomed alliance develops. You see, for me, I am against everything right-wing. Yeah. But to me, left-wing means humanism, unrestricted humanism. But if somebody supports veiling and circumvention of girls in the name of respect of other cultures, I have problems with this. Yeah, one thing. You see, this has happened a week ago before coming here in Bonn. A Jewish professor in Bonn was beaten with injuries by a Palestinian who has a German passport, and instead of arresting the professor was arrested. But they're confused. Yeah, they apologized, said we confused, but I don't take it. Yeah, and then they say, but why did the Palestinian shouted, "Keine Juden mehr in Deutschland." No more Jews in Germany. If somebody says, if you were German and you say something like that, within a few hours you are in jail. But if you are Palestinian and say, we have to understand it, what the Israelis doing to the Palestinians, this is, New York Times call this grievances, yeah? Justifiable grievances. Then I have problems with this, yeah? Yeah, okay.
Just to add one, because I have two questions.
Okay. Please be brief, because there's a long list.
You were mentioning Wolfgang Benz. He's
Yeah.
not anymore a
Yeah.
really well-read scholar in Germany.
Yeah.
He's also not anymore the head of the Center for Antisemitism.
He's retired, yeah?
Yes.
But he's still active. And that
Yeah.
what I told you was published in New York Times, in Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung.
Yeah.
He said, Ablenkung von deutschen Antisemitismus. Yeah? This destruction, but these are, these people are attacking Jews, are they write anti-Semitic slogans on synagogues. You cannot respect that because what is Israel doing to the Palestinian? Yeah.
Right. But you mentioned it's deflection, right?
Yeah.
So I think we shouldn't do the same mistake, make the same mistake.
Okay.
We actually refer to Muslim antisemitism because you were saying that Germany learns its lessons
Mhm.
fast.
Mhm.
And you were mentioning those numbers 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
Actually, there are statistics showing that we can speak about 20%. Okay,
Mhm.
it's not that big a difference, but it is a difference. And especially when you look into qualitative research showing that anti-Semitic stereotypes still persist in mainstream society in Germany. And it's, of course, not really surprising when you imagine how long anti-Semitism existed in German history.
But I think half a century of democratization has been able to bear fruit.
Right.
Maybe are you German? Yeah.
Yes, I am.
So you are an example for this for this fruit.
Right. That's not the most representative. But it's I would definitely doubt, especially since I'm doing research on what's going on the German internet. There are definitely phenomena that show that this kind of collective process of learning will take place all over society. And people use anti-Semitic tropes, but only in a new, different way. So they can say it. Of course, they don't say it explicitly, but they still express it. And it's kind of still this kind of function of orienting themselves in the world. And these old tropes and concepts are very powerful. And when you just imagine 50 or 60 years of re-education against the cultural code of 2 millennia, like, this is kind of logical that there are still some traces of that.
But I hope you agree with me on this, and then we move to the next question. Last December and in this June, 2 times, there were thousands of Muslims demonstrating in Berlin with the slogan, Hamas, Hamas, Juden ins Gas. Yeah? And no arrest, no legal process, nothing happened. If a German would say that, they would be in jail.
Yeah.
But you see, there are two ways dealing with the issues. So, and then this should not be tolerated. I mean, that's why I know in my research, I learned that not only Islamists, but it applies also to Germans. Like, if a German is anti-Semitic, he would not speak out. Yeah, but if you sit and drink a glass of beer, and then after you find he's a real anti-Semite, yeah. But you see, and so Germans would not dare speak their anti-Semitism out, yeah. But Arabs and Turks in Berlin, they do, and because they know nothing happens.
It's only the question of what's
Okay, Marlene and then Meg.
Okay.
Two short questions.
Yeah.
Being from Canada, they both have to do with Canada. First of all, you said that the 2 safe nations were America and...
Yeah, maybe Canada also.
Would
Yeah.
you put Canada?
I would add Canada. Yeah.
Second question was, I'm from Montreal specifically.
Yeah.
Montreal is a French province within Canada. And from the 1970s, many Moroccan Jews came to Montreal. And we still are quite thriving in Montreal. So I was sort of surprised when you said that there was a safe place for them.
Comparing with Egypt, yeah.
Okay.
Comparing with Egypt,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But not 100%. Now there's anti-Semitism in Morocco, but it's not like in Egypt. And you know, Jews. I lived in Morocco many times. Yeah. Also for longer time, Jews can move freely, and they can even be identified as a Jews. But can you imagine a Jew walking in Cairo with the kippah? Yeah, it's impossible. Yeah.
Just as an update, I would say Akiva and his family have had a lot of problems in Oxford in the last few days.
Yeah.
In Oxford today, yesterday. Meg.
Thank you for your lecture and sharing your personal experience with us. I have 2 questions. First, I'm very grateful that you mentioned about the zugewandte antisemitism, imported antisemitism. And you also said that in Germany, it is not
I'm sorry. Can we come together? Because I know I'm here and I can't hear a question. Can you speak just a little louder? Start again.
Okay. So you mentioned about zugewandte antisemitism, imported antisemitism.
Wait till the plane is gone. This is a Jewish conspiracy. Yeah.
And you also mentioned in your talk in Germany, it is not allowed to speak about the zugewandte, the imported antisemitism. Because I also spent some time in Germany. For example, I met a Russian-speaking Jewish lady in the shul in Germany. And her speech could be a little bit biased, but I think she was not alone among the Jewish community in Berlin. She told me that the Germans were very vicious. They were anti-Semite themselves, but they didn't show it. But they imported or they opened the doors to the refugees who were anti-Semites, and they were making the life of the Jewish life in Germany even more difficult. Her speech could be biased, but I want to know, how will you comment on this zugewandte, the important anti-Semitism? We spoke a little bit about it, and do you think is it possible to break the so-called PC in Germany towards this problem, towards this issue? And my second question is that maybe it's also to the whole our elite crowd here. Because in the past two or 3 years, I attended quite a few Jewish conferences, especially international conference, like in Yad Vashem or Association of Israel Studies. But I feel as a Chinese participant, I feel a phenomenon that we have even more Chinese participants sometimes than participants from Germany. And the topics are Jewish topics, or Holocaust education, or anti-Semitism, or all those related topics. So I felt very confused. how come that in Germany, I see a lot of conferences among the Germans, but in international arena, I saw very few German participants. Like this here, we see three people here with the category Germany, but you have Syrian background, and I am actually only officially registered in a German university, and only Matthias is German. So this phenomenon really surprised me. I don't know, is that because it's the less academic interest, or this participation from the German scholars in the international arena, they are influenced by what? I didn't see their presence in a proportional way.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to say.
This is very. I hope this came vocally through. This is so important, and I'm grateful to you. There is, I came to Germany in the age of 62. I was 18 years old, and I did not travel between 62 and 82 for 20 years. I did not travel except to some Arab countries, but since 82, my wife is German, and my wife is clean German, and her family is also clean, yeah, because her father was in the resistance against Hitler. Otherwise, I would not have married her. Yeah, but I had problems.
What do you mean by clean?
Clean from fascism. Clean from fascism. Yeah. Okay. Can you use it? Yeah. Okay. Because for me, is Nazi ideology is dirt. Yeah. Yeah. So if a person has a Nazi dirt, so he's not clean. Yeah. So clean is, you're clean from this dirt, because it's Nazi ideology is not another point of view. It is dirt. For me, it's dirt. Okay. And every racism is a dirt also. Yeah. Okay. I failed. With the age of, I came to Germany in the age of 18, and only 10 years after that, without knowing one word in German. Within the 10 years, I made my PhD. Those who don't know that, if you want to be a professor in Germany, PhD is not enough. You need a super German. I had Promotion, Habilitation, and a chair. And I got chair at the University of Göttingen. And what do you want more? But I wanted to be a member of the German community, sense of belonging. My title in Germany, even when I received big honors, say, ein Syrer mit deutschem Pass, Syrian with German passport. But I'm German citizen. But German is not an ethnic term, should be a citizen term. And then I started my life outside Germany, and between 82 until my retirement, I never stayed in a place longer than 10 days between Indonesia and Berkeley. Yeah, and that was my life. And then now I'm in Germany. I'm most of the time in Germany, and I see a country that I do not like, not at all. And then I tell you something. Somebody who is clean. Yeah, a German Green member of the parliament. He's a gay. Yeah, he's green. He's gay, and he is an expert on anti-Semitism, and he wrote different articles in the past in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. I'm glad he can be published. He said 30 to 40% of the German judges, they judge anti-Semite assaults with understanding. Yeah, and they say if the Juden sich so benehmen, when the Jews behave like this, so they deserve it. So this is the logic, and then there were many assaults on Jewish facilities in Germany by migrants, and the sentences that were made by German were unbelievable. And his name is Lothar Beck. Lothar Beck asked the question: are 40% of the Germans today like the German judges who say the Jews are responsible for what's happening to them? This is now. So I mean, there's something changed, and it's you are right, and it's terrifying. Yeah, yeah. And there's no public debate about this. Yeah, it's forbidden. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions. We only have a few minutes left in this segment, but we're coming back for more. So be patient. Rami is going to ask the question for two of our Egyptian colleagues.
زهرة بكتيب sorry. Professor, thank you for your valuable lecture. And my colleagues Saeed and Sarah have some inquiries, you can call it a question. It's depending on you. They are wanted to understand more about how you can distinguish between Islam and Islamism.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
Oh, okay.
in terms of Islam, please, I wanna keep. If Islamism are not from Islam, but they are take their legitimacy from Hadith, from Quran, so they are from Islam.
Oh, okay.
That's
Yeah.
the point.
Okay.
Second, you mentioned that anti-Semitism are Europeans, not has any root in Islam. But Samah has some objection. He said that in Islam there is a direct, a clear Quranic phrases and the Hadith urges Muslim to make a violence against non-Muslim and Jews.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So could you please clear for us this point of view?
Okay, the first question, this is very important. There's a misunderstanding. I did not say, I said there, speak slowly. I said there is a difference between Islam and Islamism. But I did not say Islamism has nothing to do with Islam. This would be wrong. I have introduced a new word into English, French, and German. If you look in Oxford Dictionary, the word religion, there is no verb out of religion. Religion is always a noun. And I introduced the term religionization. In German, Religionisierung, en français, Religionisation. If you articulate, like in Egypt, Muslim brothers and other Islamists, there's not only, they articulate their political program in an Islamic language with the references to the Quran, to the Sharia, and so it has to do with Islam. And this is religionization of the issues. Like if you address there's a problem of accommodation in Cairo, a problem of imbalance between economic growth and demographic growth. These things are articulated, but not as political or social, but in religious terms. So Islamism is the articulation of Islamic politics in Islamic language. But there are differences, and maybe allow me just to use this. There are the issues. I took the issues and start with. It's not commercial for my book, but really because of the issue. Why Islamism is not Islam? Yeah, that's the first chapter. Then Islamism and the political order. Yeah, Islamists argue for an Islamic government, Hukuma Islamiyya, and the term Hukuma, government, does not exist in the Quran. And the Islamic State, Dawla in Arabic, in Turkish, Dawlat, does not exist in the Quran, not one single time. Dastur Islami, constitution, this is Dastur is in modern Arabic. The word Dastur does not exist in the 7th century. So that means when Islamists go for an Islamic government, for an Islamic state, this is not the religion of Islam. Yeah? This is Islamism. But it is articulated in religious terms. And you say they are evil. Like, the word hakama in Arabic, but you have to be educated to understand it. Hakama has two meanings in Arabic. Hakama means to judge, and hakama means to rule. And the Quran says true Muslim should judge in Islamic terms. And they translated true Muslims should rule within Islamic government. Yeah? So it's obvious falsification. And then Islamism and anti-Semitism. And here, please read the book of Bernard Lewis, The Jews of Islam. Yeah? And it's about 350 pages. And he shows Islamism in a modern understanding does not exist in Islam. And Judaism, there is anti-Jewish sentiments in Quran. No doubt about this. But you see, there is a French biographer of the Prophet. His name is Maxime Rodinson. He passed away, one of the greatest. We don't have scholars of this caliber. And he says the Quran is like Chronicles of Arabia in the 7th century. When the Prophet was in good terms with the Jews, he liked them, and there were positive things about them. And when he was not in good terms with them, then there was these obnoxious terms about them. And you remember that Sadat went to Israel 79 December, and he delivered a speech, and the speech was about 50% Quran quotes, yeah? And Sheikh al-Azhar wrote it for him, yeah? And he looked in the Quran and took up the positive things. And Sadat said to the Jewish audience, I am here fulfilling the command of Islam. Yeah, you see, and you see when at the beginning of Islam, Muslims prayed not in the direction of Mecca but Jerusalem. Yeah, but only after the quarrel with the Jews they changed. Yeah, so anti-Semitism in a modern meaning of genocide does not exist in the Quran, and the evidence for me acceptable Bernard Lewis. And then Islamism and democracy, they do not match. Then Islamism and violence, yeah. Islam is not a pacifist religion. It's, violence is allowed, but there's a conduct. Yeah, you are not allowed to kill women, elderly men, and children. Yeah, and so there are rules for implementing violence, as in the Quran means qital. Because there are some Muslims say Islam does not allow violence. This is not wrong. This is wrong. Islam allows violence, but subject to rules, yeah, and so on. I mean, so there are differences, and so this book is academic, but also the differences are political.
And you are making a distinction between anti-Semitism, which has come from you. I read Bernard Lewis, I read Jews of Islam, so I understand what you're talking about. But that's exactly what I want to understand about this, because I assume that your mother and other people didn't read Sayyid Qutb in order to say that. So can you explain a little bit why? What has the Jew done that basically he's worth of being beaten? So what is that sentiment, which is, I understand is very widespread? It's not an intellectual issue, right? It's not a. Can you elaborate a little bit on that very basic pre-Western, because this is not something that the West has brought into Islam, I guess. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Maybe I make comparison with Christians. Yeah, there's a part of Damascus, Bab Tuma, 20% of the Damascene at the time were living there, and they are Christians. Yeah, and according to Islamic theology, there are three categories of humans: Muslims, who are true believers, then believers of a second class. These are Jews and Christians, and the unbelievers, yeah, kafirun, yeah. This includes all. I mean, not only atheists, but also Buddhists, Hindus, Confucians. They are all unbelievers. So that means Christian and Jews enjoy the recognition of being believers. However, believer of a second class. But in the prejudice that some are human, some are less human, applied to Jews, this you don't find this against Christians. So my mother would never say, or any other Syrian would say, but he's why are you doing to him? He's Christian or he is not Christian. This happens only with regard to Jews. And the indication is, as my interpretation is, Jews are dehumanized. Yeah? And this is worse. This is, even though anti-Semitism is genocidal, but you see, you can dehumanize a person without, like, if racists, European racists who consider Africans are less human, they do not argue that Africans should be killed. Anti-Semites say Jews should be killed, should be eradicated. But I mean, for a person who considers himself or herself as a humanist, you must protect the whole humanity. Yeah, and humanity exists of humans, regardless of color, religion, or whatever. This is not anti-Semitism. This is Judeophobia, to dehumanize the Jews and consider them less human. So you can beat a Jew, but you cannot beat a Muslim. Yeah? Yeah. So my father was beating me, but I'm a Muslim. So how could you beat him, even though he is a Muslim? You don't beat a Muslim, but you can beat a Jew. Yeah. Yeah. So هو مش يهودي. My mother would say, I love my mother above everything. But she doesn't know what does it mean. But she learned this is the culture. But you say, Bassam is not a Jew. So why you are beating him in this way? Yeah? So the logic is, a Jew is dehumanized. So you can do to a Jew what you cannot do to a Muslim. I hope.
Perfect.
I want you all to bear with me because I had my thoughts very well together and then I went outside. So what prompted my first question, at least a half hour ago, was the statement that Charles made about the Syrian army. Somebody made the comment that the Syrian army, or Charles made the statement that what's happened to the Syrians in this war, the Syrian civilians, is regarded by many as genocide.
Mm.
Somebody after that, and I don't know if it was you, Professor, that said that it was alleged that the Syrian army was being orchestrated or commanded by the Jews.
By Jewish officers. Yeah.
Okay. Which had me thinking about one question, and then I went outside, and what Addie just mentioned, I also kind of thought about your mother's statement, and it made me wonder that over the last couple of days we've been asking the question, or thinking about what is anti-Semitism, and we've gotten various definitions.
It is more than racism, much more.
A lot more. But I realize now that, in every definition of anti-Semitism is the construct of the Jew. And I'm really wondering, I'm not saying today, but at some point we need to engage each other in how the meaning or the construct of the Jew has changed. It's not even referencing a religion or a people anymore. It's evolved into something that, like the hatred of Jews itself.
Yeah.
That the Jew is anything that you hate.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Jew is anything.
You are right.
And the hatred of Jews is for anything they do or anything they don't do. So then back to Charles' point. Because I also finished a book recently and had a long conversation with an author from Germany. Because now, I'm sure you've heard allegations that there is a Holocaust going on in Palestine. Yes, right? And there are people alleging that the Jews now are guilty of the very same thing, the very same act of genocide committed against them. Have you heard this? That Jews are guilty of genocide against Palestinians. In Germany, what this book and what this author is arguing is that the Germans have conveniently, not all, but many have conveniently embraced the idea that for all these years that Germany has been castigated, excoriated for genocide, that now what we're seeing, and this is what they're embracing, is the idea that the Jews are just as capable of committing genocide as they were of being the victims of genocide. So, I lost my question.
No, you have to.
But I actually, then when I was outside, there was a question I don't.
But you have 2 points, you should not be lost.
I don't know if I understood. And then I asked Rami, and I got a better understanding. what did you mean by the Islamization of anti-Semitism? Because I walked away with one interpretation, and then the three people I was talking to walked away with three different other interpretations.
Yeah, yeah.
So why,
Okay.
let's ask
Okay.
the author,
Okay.
what is the
This
Islamization?
now you have now three issues, and all of them are precious. Yeah. Start with the first one, the Jew. The Jew is not an individual, or like the African is not an individual, is a member of a collectivity. Yeah, and you defame the entire collectivity. Yeah, and this is I'm 74. And I read, believe me, thousands of books, yeah? But there are some few that worth mentioning. Not books, articles. There's an article by Adorno, Lehren von Auschwitz, Lessons from Auschwitz. And he says, there is a danger that Auschwitz could happen again. And what can we do to prevent that Auschwitz could happen again? And he said, to look at humans as individuals. And if you relate a person, whatever person, to a collectivity, say, der Afrikaner, the Africans, the Jew, the Araba, the Muslim, and then their Muslim, the Muslim, is not an individual, is a member of the collectivity. And you say, as long this thinking prevails, the danger that Auschwitz could happen again is in place. Yeah. And this happens now. Now I move to the second question. Some Germans, from this gentleman is a German, but you are a fine person. Yeah.
He's a clean German, eh?
Yeah, okay. But listen, this is because the Germans. I've been living for really, and I can compare. I know almost maybe 80% of African states. I know. I live there. I know Southeast Asia. I know Europe. So I know the French, the Norwegian, Italians, and I spent a lot of. In a period of 40 years, I never stayed in a place longer than 10 days. So I'm telling you the truth, yeah. Because one time the German could be sometimes a German professor. I said. My statements about Islam are based on 40 years of research in 22 Islamic countries. And while I was speaking, a German professor, supposed to be a civilized man, and he's very famous. I will not mention his name. He's very, very famous. And he stood up. He said, Professor Tibi is deceiving us. This cannot be true that he lived in 20 different countries. Then I looked after that in Wikipedia. He lived only in Germany. So you cannot imagine a person. So now coming back, I can compare. And believe me, I can compare the German with others. And I've been living in Germany, and my knowledge of German, it's better. This is true. My knowledge of German is better than my Arabic. Even though I'm Hafiz, I know the Quran by heart, but the German is so close to me, educated in philosophy, and I wrote 30 books in German, yeah, directly without copy editing. But I do not understand the Germans, yeah, and their sense of guilt. This sometimes they punish you. You feel guilty and you punish yourself. Nobody is punishing you. You punish yourself. And what's happening now in Palestine or in Israel or in the occupied states, call them what you want, they feel so relieved about this. You say, so now look, the Jews are doing, not the Jews are doing what we have been, what we have done to them. So, and they feel this like if you had 30 years no sex, and then you have sex and you feel relieved, yeah, really, something like that, yeah, and they're happy about it. and so this is the second, and so I mean this is now, and you look, this is I quoted a green gay member of the parliament. Who said the Germans? They say they acquit Arabs who commit anti-Semitic Say they are only expressing their grievances against the Jews, what the Jews are doing. So this is belongs to this. Then the third thing, this is Islamization. You see, like I was a Marxist, yeah, and when I was a young and not adult, fully adult, so I was I'm glad about this. I was celebrated in the Arab world. I have about 40 articles written when I was between the age of 22 and 26, about 4 big articles in German, and I was celebrated the only Arab Marxist who can quote Marx in original and who read Hegel. So I was quoting Hegel about dialectic, and you see, educated Arabs understand me, or quite understand me, but the average one do not understand me. This is something alien, something not comprehensible, and I mean, my community was maybe few thousand Arabs between Morocco and Iraq, yeah. But the Islamists were successful over us. I belong to the Arab left, yeah, and the Arab left lost, yeah. And the Islamists won. That was around 70, the year around 70. Why? Because Islamists were speaking a fundamentalist language in the language of Islam. And the notion for this is authenticity. The Islamists provided a political religion, an ideology which is not Islamic, an Islamic authenticity. And to give an idea, authenticity, like I was, then this is Islamization. One example and then I stop. I was speaking in Arabic, al-proletariat. Al-proletariat is translation of proletariat. So maybe a few hundred or few thousand Arabs will understand it. But the Islamists, they speak of the Ummah. And the Ummah is the major notion of Islam. All Muslims constitute an Ummah. And they speak about the Ummah, and the Ummah, the Islamic Ummah should free the Muslims from the pains of the Crusaders and the Jews and what have you. Yeah, and this average Muslim understand this. So they speak in Islamic language, but they bring an alien ideology and bring it in an Islamic language, and this is Islamization. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Philippe, and then Valerie.
Thank you very much, Professor. Just one short comment and one question. You said, and I totally agree with you, that the anti-Semitism has a Western origin. I agree, totally. But I will go further than what you said. I will say that anti-Western sentiment is a Western thing.
Yeah.
And you will find that, easily after what you said, after Kant, after the Aufklärung, with the German idealistical philosophers, just like Fichte, or even with Hegel, and then further with other philosophers that drank from the idealistic Germans. Second comment on the question. It's quite interesting that you will find lots of influence of those romanticists and with the idea of the organic community and so on inside Kutb. Said Kutb, as you probably know, much better than Henry, of course, he was a reader of Fichte and Hegel, and of course, he translated everything in the dialectical materialism of Marx, adopted that, like you said, with an Islamic language. And so my point is, you have a strict connection between the organic Germans or the idealistic Germans, just like Fichte, which are quite complex. And my point is, why did this happen? And why there is this kind of connection between guys like Said Qutb? Why did Islamism pull this romantic idealism of Germany, and what kind of links are there? Can you develop a little bit more about it?
I am a member of a German institution established by the former Chancellor of Germany, Helmut Schmidt, who is clean. And therefore, he established 93 Deutsche Nationalstiftung, German National Foundation, for for a new definition of German identity. And his argument was the following, and I'm coming to your answer. His argument was, if we do not define German identity in European and democratic terms, then we leave the space for right-wing movements and for Nazis, and then they come and they fill the notion of identity with their ideology. Then we have, it is not the issue that we forbid talking about identity, then we support the right wing. It is, we need to define identity in European and democratic terms.
Actually, right now you have a strong movement, which is called the hipsters of right wing, of
Yeah.
extreme right, the identitarians.
Yeah.
And so the identitarians, they go precisely what you said. So
No, but that is, that's quoting,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
me. It's, yeah. No, but let me, and then, and this foundation gives a prize every year. And the person who receives the prize every year, and if you read German? But maybe, I bought the book, but I'm starting reading it. His name is Safransky, a German philosopher in my age, and he wrote a book, Romantik, eine deutsche Affäre. Romantic is a German affair. And he is criticizing the German romantic as a German disease, exactly the way you speak. And he said, we have to free ourselves from this. And one of the features of the German romantic is the goodwill. The Germans, Germans come and say, I want to save humanity, I want to do the best things, but you have the best intention, but the result is exactly the opposite. Yeah, you criticize something and you end with an Auschwitz. Yeah, and this is his argument. And he was a former Maoist. And he criticizes, he said, he became Maoist because he wanted something better, and he ended up with totalitarianism. And this is, I don't know whether I can say, this is, in Germany is 100% true, but does this apply to the French or Swedish and so? I'm not so sure, but this is a problem in Germany, self-hate, yeah? Self-hate and German self-hate projected into the Jew, and then you kill the Jew to free yourself of your self-hate. It sounds very illogical, but this is German history, yeah? And one of the other articles that I like very much is from Adorno, Auf die Frage, was ist Deutsch? Adorno left Germany 1933 to save his life, and he returned to Germany in the early 50s. And Herbert Marcuse was one of the people, they flew together, and Herbert Marcuse, he was professor in Berkeley, he said, after Hitler, there is no Germany for me. And he raised, Marcuse, the Jew, Marcuse, raised the question against the Jew Adorno, are you crazy? You going back to Germany? And to answer this question, he gave a lecture, which is published as an article, Auf die Frage, was ist Deutsch? Answering the question, what is German? And he says it is very difficult to answer this question, but he makes it clear there are positive things about Germany and there are obnoxious things about Germany. And he said, I like this phrase, if Hitler appeared in Paris and London and would have talked the way he was talking to the German, people would have laughed about him. Become a Lachnummer in German. Yeah? But in Germany, he attracted all Germans, and he led them to Second World War. So I mean, there's something German. So Hitler did not start 1933. It goes back into German history. Yeah, and the Germans and Safransky acknowledged that. Yeah, in this book, German romantic. Actually, is something. If you think about Fichte, Herder, these are humanists. Even a professor here at a very famous professor at Oxford University. He passed away. Berlin. Isaiah Berlin. He wrote a book defending Herder. But Herder was 18th century. But Herder is the prehistory of Hitler, yeah? According to Safransky. Yeah?
Yeah. The point is, why he could adopt easily.
He adopted Lenin. He doesn't know German culture. Trotubes has no idea. But he adopted the vocabulary of Lenin. the party theory of Lenin.
There are some things that could be written about Fichte, and you can find a little bit of Fichte. Even the idea of a non-individual community, a non-liberal community, an idea of a sort of organic community that definitely could adopt. So what I'm saying, you can find a little bit of German idealism inside Kut, or even the beginning of some forms of Islamism. So that's my
Okay, I did not go further than that, but just one information. I was in Oxford 1980, the first time, and this is the second time. Yeah, and I lectured at the St. Anthony College, and on the occasion presenting my first book in English, it's the title of the book, Arab Nationalism. And in that book, I analyzed the shift in the 19th century of Arab intellectual, 19th and 20th century, from Francophilia, the early Arabs, Arab Westerner, Westernized, they all were educated in France. Najib Azuri, who wrote the first anti-Semitic right, was in France, but they were liberals, liberal French, and there was a shift from Francophilia to Germanophilia, and the father, the intellectual father of Arab nationalism, his name Husri, he was not an Islamist. He introduced Fichte into the Arab world. Fichte is not translated, but paraphrased by Husri, and that was Fichte. This is my research with this book, Arab Nationalism. Fichte is well known in the Arab world without being translated into Arabic. And probably Sayyid Qutb came across this thinking as well.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. So Valerie's next, but I just want to make two very quick comments. Qutb also lives in the United States and looks at the decadence of American music and jazz, and so his critique of the impurity of the West, I think, is also affected by his American experience. And then you also said the Germans engage in self-hate, so they go to kill the Jews.
Yeah.
And as you said that, I remember the book. There's an amazing book by James Carroll called Constantine's Sword.
Yeah.
So I mean, and he writes about the cross and Christ on the cross. So self-hatred, original sin, the Jew on the cross. That's an important imagery, and I think this book by Carroll is very important. Okay, Valerie.
I think I'm switching this a little bit. I just would like some clarity. You said earlier, and I think I heard this right, that in Indonesia, there isn't anti-Semitism, or
no anti-Semitism. No. I lived in Indonesia twice. I was teaching at the Hidayatullah Islamic State University, and between 1995 and 2008, I traveled annually once to Indonesia, and I lived there in a period of time. And I did not come across anti-Semites. Yeah.
was there any then negative views on?
They don't like Chinese. Yeah. Maybe the Chinese in Indonesia are the Jews. Yeah. Okay. Because the Chinese are rich and successful, and they're envious. Yeah. Like, in Germany, the German Jews were highly educated, highly successful, rich, and then you are envious, and then you want to kill them. Yeah? But there is a resemblance. Like the Chinese in Indonesia are the Jews of the Germans.
Okay, so thanks, Naya. And then Anna.
So here's my question about importing, exporting anti-Semitism, and you may correct me if I'm wrong, regarding studies of anti-Israel, anti-Semitic sentiment in Europe, and it's really being held among young people of Arab or Muslims or Arab origin. And I'm curious, many of them born in Europe and Great Britain.
Yeah.
So in terms of this export-import issue, they call them radicalized. Sometimes in America, this is the term. But how do you explain this phenomenon of, it's really, really prevalent in these student movements, and many of these people are born right here on the European soil.
There's a magic word for that. It is integration. Yeah, integration means in Germany, there is a definition, official definition of integration now. Between September 2015 and now, about 3 million new people came into the country. Yeah, and so the integration is for Germans to register the people legally, providing with housing, income, and Sprachkurse, courses for teaching German. That's it. And I was arguing in public for many years, and I was
saying not proper integration.
this is not enough. Yeah, I was arguing for two things. I said I lived in America, and at Harvard University, 18 years, I was member of the faculty, member of the community, and nobody looked at me as a foreigner. Yeah, but in Germany, I'm always a Syrer mit deutschem Pass, German with a Syrian with a German passport. And I said the second, integration means inclusion. Inclusion, not in legal sense, but inclusion means I feel as a German, and I'm not ethnic German, but to define German as a community, not as ethnic. You know? So the de-ethnicization of the term German, de-ethnicization of the term German. So somebody who is I am yellow, somebody who's yellow like me, or somebody who's black could be a German. Yeah, I was German. And nobody was asking. Like I have a German student. She has a black thing, but she's born in Germany. She's never been outside Germany. And people ask her, from where Africa do you come? I said, I've never been to Africa. So I mean. Lack of integration, identification with the community you are living in, and with regard to Germany, a part of the integration courses should be teaching in anti-Semitism. What is and this is not happening. Yeah, and the young they're now in Berlin. I do research on that. Now you start with the fourth generation among basically Turks, yeah. But the early generation was not a troublemaker. The elderly Turks who came in the 60s, they are thankful that they get a work, better life than in Turkey, and the youngsters are aggressive. They hate the Germans. They really hate the Germans, and yeah. I mean they were born, and some of them speak broken Turkish. Yeah. I did field work in the banlieue in Paris, yeah, and I tried to speak proper Arabic with Maghrebinis, and they can't. They speak broken French and less than broken Arabic, yeah. But they hate France, yeah. It's not only a German problem, but in Germany is awkward. Yeah? But I mean, the answer to your question is the failed integration in the sense of giving the people identity and sense of belonging. And the most recent example for this is now the soccer player Ozil. Yeah, he is born in Germany. He's millionaire, multimillionaire, and success member of the national team. And he doesn't like Germany. His identity is Erdogan, not the German constitution. Yeah.
Because he Erdogan fans. Yeah. It's clear. He went to meet with Erdogan and signed for him in his ship. So he's not loyal to Germany 100%. He put himself in this position. Not German people push him into this position.
Yeah.
So
both.
Also, I think we have a lot of questions. So, I think we'll also discuss the fact that there's sort of this merger between the Muslim Brotherhood and Wahhabi Saudi Arabian money, which is also having an impact on students, the student context in North America and in Europe and in the communities. So there's sort of a radicalization process that some of the scholars will speak to. I think is important. So we have a lot of questions. So I suggest we try to pick up the pace of the questions and the responses because we have a long list. So it'll be Anna and then Ira.
Professor, the question to you as the establisher of Jewish-Islamic dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, what are the main difficulties except Israel in this dialogue?
Yeah.
And the second question is...
This is a very good question.
And the second question that is attached to that question. Let's just reflect, yes, what have to be the strategic steps to establish the peace in the Middle East?
Okay. The first question, we were together. I have a witness here. Yeah, we were together in a trialogue at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, and we produced a book. He's also responsible for it, Encountering the Stranger. Yeah, and there were many other Muslims. I was not the only Muslim, but I was the only Muslims who spoke without censorship. And I said, you talked about obstacle. The major obstacle for a Jewish Islamic understanding are not the Jews, are the Muslims. It is Islamic theology. In Islamic theology, you have three classes of humans. Human people are not equals. You have equals are only the true Muslims. If you are a Jew or Christian, you are second class, Tibi in Islam, and if you are Hindu you are even less. You can be killed as kafir. Yeah, and this is Islamic. The Islamic theology needs a reform, and this happened. I must tell you the story in details. That was in May 1994. Rabbi Albert Friedlander, a German Jew who fled to England, and God bless him, and I hope Allah will send him to paradise because he deserves it. This Rabbi Friedlander and my humble self, we established the dialogue in the Westminster Synagogue in London, where 20 Jews, Reform Jews, and 20 Reform Muslims. And one of the rabbis, it was not Friedlander, it was another one, he stood up in the first minute. He said, "We Jews, we welcome you in our synagogue, and we Jews are grateful to you that you saved our lives in the Middle Ages against a Christian who butchered us. Yeah? You gave us safe life, and the Christian butchered us." He said that was the Middle Age. We live now in the 20th century, in the year 1994. We do not want to be dhimmis. Safe life is not enough for us. We want to be equals. So if you are willing to say Judaism is equal to Islam, you are welcome to stay, and we continue. If not, here's the door. So clear. Who was that? And we asked, can we retreat for 10, 15 minutes and talk? And we did. And we returned, and I was the speaker of the community. I said, we submit, we agree, but we are honest people. We are a minority among Muslims. So what we think is not what other things. But then they said, stay when we continue. And so as long as Muslims do not accept Jews as equals, an equal religion, there can be no peace.
Thank you. Okay, Ira, and then Sunni, and then Giuseppe.
Well, thank you, Professor. I found myself a lot of your comments nodding my head. But there were a few different perspectives, and we had a couple conversations about that.
This makes discussion exciting, yeah? Otherwise it would be boring, yeah?
I hesitate to have any different perspectives, given the depth of your knowledge and the time you spent in places where you speak the language, and I don't, and I haven't been nearly as many times. But in the descriptions of Germany, I think there are lots of things to worry about that I worry about and worry about the Jewish community. But there are also there are a few good signs. One is, Germany took the lead in the last few years in advocating for the working definition of anti-Semitism, which includes specifically where certain types of criticisms of Israel can be anti-Semitic, and really got the whole EU, European delegations, and the OSCE behind that, and only Russian veto stopped it. They have pushed this in the European Parliament. I have never seen a dedicated Europeans fighting anti-Semitism at the government level than I do in some German diplomats like Felix Klein, who's now the new anti-Semitism kind of czar for the German government, or Catherine von Schnurbein, who's the new EU coordinator. These are amazing people. So I have, again, I want to be Pollyannish here. And I really worry about Western European Jewish communities, and some Eastern ones too, but what's going on in the West and what many things you describe with the new anti-Semitism, I totally agree with. But there are some, even other places, there are some differences at the tops of governments as opposed to 10, 15 years ago. A place like France, we have Prime Minister Valls, gets it. But he's not the only one.
And many French Jews are leaving. Huh?
Well, not that many. I worry about French Jewry, but but I don't think you're going to have 500,000 Jews leave France. But Valls says if we lose 10%, France is no longer France. This is not about Jews, it's about the very values of the French Republic. And it's not just Valls. I mean, this government has been good. The Sarkozy government has been good. Much better than the past governments, whether they're center-right or socialist. And there's some willingness, even though sometimes the prosecutors and police won't deal with anti-Semitism, as we saw in the Halimi film, there are top government officials saying, yes, this is where it's coming from. It's coming from the Banlieue, and we've got to deal with it. The Germans are doing some of the same thing. I know a German minister talked to a colleague of mine recently, a senior head of a major Jewish organization, said, we are frightened. We think bringing refugees in was the right thing to do. But I will tell you, we're frightened what's going to happen in 10 years. We don't know how to integrate these folks. And the French will tell you the same thing. But they're trying. They really know the problem is serious. And not just for Jews. It's serious because it goes to the very heart of democracy and pluralistic societies, and they want to keep these societies. UK, I worry about less, but there are serious problems here. But again, if Corbyn comes in, I'm going to worry a whole lot. But current leadership has been, and the past governments have been pretty darn good at speaking out where it wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. So again, I don't want to be Pollyannish. I worry greatly. The problems are huge. But we do also have at the top, at least, some movement that's very positive. This doesn't happen every place. I wouldn't tell you the same thing in Netherlands or much of Scandinavia, etc. But there is some real things to say. There's some hope here. And because at least the governments recognize the nature of the problem, and it is, again, we're not just protecting Jews. We're protecting something much larger.
Okay. I was listening to Ira most attentively because he announced dissent. And I agree to every word he said. I don't see the dissent. I 100%. But I have only one addition. Yeah, to be honest, and this is recorded. I have love-hate to Germany. I love Germany, and I love German culture, and I hate it at the same time, because I did not, I have Bundesverdienstkreuz erster Klasse. I have the merit of the what is it called in English? Bendix, a Berlin Jew who migrated, became very big professor in Berkeley, and he's my mentor, like Bernard Lewis, my mentor and friend. He wrote a book, Kings or People, comparative politics about the history in Europe. In England or Great Britain and France, there were real revolutions. The change in a society came from civil society. And the change in Germany came from the state, Obrigkeitsstaat, from above. Yeah? And what's happening, you are right, with regard to anti-Semitism, the state is on the highest level. But and they want, the politicians, you quoted them, and you are right, they are aware of the problem, but how to translate this from above to the civil society? In the civil society, it looks different, and this is not new, this is German history. Yeah?
We agree on that too. We don't deal with civil society.
Okay.
I'll intervene just very briefly. I was recently at a closed-door session in Italy that was organized by Catherine, the European Union Coordinating Committee on Issues of Anti-Semitism. And I was on a panel with, on my right, was a member of the Austrian government basically from the Fascist Party. My mother's father came from Vienna, so I'm sitting next to a fascist, I would call him a fascist from Austria. And on my left was a young German of Turkish origin that runs an NGO sponsored by the European Union on fighting anti-Semitism. And he is definitely connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. And then there was me. And this is Europe today. And that was a moment that I'll remember. So there's a lot of odd contradictions taking place. So yeah. So Sunni, Giuseppe, and then Laura.
Professor,
And we're going to have to speed it up because there's a lot of people want to.
Did I hear well Sunni?
Yes.
So you are Sunni? I am Sunni also.
Sunni,
Yeah? So we are Sunnis. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay.
I'm named after a West African king.
Yeah.
But heavy burden, right? But I was very interested in your book. I want to definitely pick it up. Islamization and Islam.
Yeah.
And a key word in that book that I want you to espouse on. I don't know if you discussed it. Is the word jihad. I know here at the conference we've been talking a lot about jihadists and how horrible they are to the world community. However, when you look at the word jihad, it has beauty to its meaning. Can you kind of
okay, this is one. I mean, actually, my friend Charles announced that I shall talk about jihad, but this is not in my presentation. And now you facilitate talking about jihad. Yeah. So maybe we start with an anecdote, but it's not personal. Yeah. There are Islamic apologetics. Yeah. There are people. I mean, 9/11. Many people said this is Islam, this is Islamic terrorism, and other Muslims say this has nothing to do with Islam. And they say, why the assault of 9/11 have nothing to do with Islam? And the argument was the following from the Sharia. There's Islamic Sharia, and if you fight jihad and you want to kill, it's allowed to kill. Yeah, I must acknowledge that. Then you have to inform, like suppose you are Christians and I want you to convert to Islam, and I say I give you 2 weeks time to think it over, and if not, then I will wage jihad against you. Yeah, so you are warned, pre-warning. So this is one. You are not allowed to fight jihad without pre-warning. Terrorism is a fight from ambush fighting. Like if you say I'm gonna put a bomb in a cafe in Tel Aviv, this is not jihad, but this terrorism is not jihad. Yeah. So so people say so jihad has nothing to do with this. But you see, and the real facts, they go down the drain. Yeah. Now I'm telling you, try to find. And those who want to know more about this, I have another book in English, Political Islam, World Politics and Europe. This is written in Cornell, and the first 100 pages about jihad and jihadism, like Islam and Islamism. And I'll try to summarize in 3 or 4 minutes the 100 pages in my book, Political Islam, World Politics and Europe. The term jihad occurs in the Quran. And Islamic apologetics mean jihad means in the Quran self-exertion. Like you have an exam, you study well, and if you pass the exam, so that was a good jihad. But if you fail, then this is a bad jihad. This is half the truth. It's true. Jihad is a fight for the spread of Islam. It could be violent and it could be peaceful. If it is violent, there's another word which I never found this word in Western writing, German, French, and English about jihad. The term is qital. Qital. Qital means physical fighting. So jihad could be done peacefully with the argument or soft power. So I would say, you do what I want, but if you don't do that, then I stab you. Yeah. So this is soft power. Yeah. But then, but then the other thing, if you do not comply with me, then I'm entitled to resort to qital. Qital is physical fighting, but qital has rules. to fight qital, you need an entitlement from an imam. So Saddam Hussein, when he called for jihad, Saddam Hussein is not imam, so he cannot call for jihad. Can be called upon only by institutional imam, established imam, and it is subject to rules. First rule: pre-warning. I give you time, 1 week, 2 times, so to consider. But then if you do not comply, you have to think about the consequences. Yeah? Okay, number 2, there are limits on subjects, methods, and targets. It is not allowed the use of force in jihad. It is only against people who are armed. Like if you, in 9/11, there was no pre-warning. How can you warn 4,000 people in the Trade Center that we are coming with the planes? So there was no pre-warning, and they were all civilians. I cannot, if you are not armed, I cannot fight. I cannot fight against you. If you are a woman and if you are a child, I cannot fight against you. And so these things, this is the Islamic doctrine of jihad. It exists in the Quran. And it was practiced by Islamic armies, but not exactly always. But Islamic armies, there's an Israeli professor, his name is Ephraim Karsh, professor in Bar Ilan, and he wrote a very nice book, also published in this series, Yale University Press, Islamic Imperialism. And so there were Islamic imperialist conquests like the European ones, yeah? And they were brutal. Yeah? But the Islamic doctrine is as I told you. And now, the founder of Islamism is a person, his name Hassan al-Banna. And he was assassinated 1949. In 1928, he established the movement of the Muslim Brotherhood in Cairo, Ismailiyah, in the vicinity. And he wrote 1930 an essay of 30 pages. You cannot speak about Islamic terrorism without knowing this essay. But 90% or 95% of Western experts who write about Islamic terrorism don't know this essay. This essay, Risala fi al-Jihad, an essay on jihad. And he says, in it, in earlier times we are strong and we were able to practice jihad as prescribed in the Quran. Pre-warning, limited targets, no terror actions, etc., etc. But we are today weak and we have to revise the doctrine of the jihad. And he says terrorism is allowed. And he pleads for terrorism. And this essay is used by Islamist learning, or you say indoctrination is better, yeah? Indoctrination. And so qital becomes without pre-warning, without targets, without acknowledging are these people armed or not armed, are they children, are they women? And this is Islamist groups, and I coined the term, there's a classical jihad and there's an Islamist jihadization of the doctrine. Yeah?
Thank you. So now we have Giuseppe, Laura.
But it has jihadist Islam has to do something with Islam. It is not outside of Islam. This is for you. Yeah? Jihadist Islam is also Islam. Yeah? Okay, okay, okay.
But excuse me, just you said that you as a jihadi you're not allowed to kill women, children, anyone.
No, classical jihad, not jihad. Jihadi is allowed. Jihad is allowed, but classical jihad is not allowed.
What is classical jihad?
It was 7th century. Between the 7th and the 17th century, there were an Islamic conquest of the world. And Islam was at the time, before the rise of the West, Islam was the strongest civilization on earth. And Muslim armies conquered first Arabs and then Turks. They conquered most of the world. Yeah?
But the first Muslim people in Arab Peninsula, when Prophet Muhammad and his colleague killed the Bani Qurayza, they were Jews, they were women, there were children, some
okay.
they isolated. How, in which principles they were kept in?
Yeah,
On which basis they were kept in?
Okay.
Okay, good point. So Giuseppe, Laura, then Harold.
Yes, okay, I changed my question over time because you were right. So now, one thing, Professor Tibi, you spoke about the distinction, you clarified the distinction between Judeophobia and anti-Semitism. But can you elaborate a little bit more about the connection between Judeophobia and anti-Semitism? Because when we think at the European experience, centuries of Judeophobia provided the favorable ground for the new and the modern anti-Semitism. And the same thing probably holds true for the Arab world, because it was very easy to use new concept and to articulate this concept in an Islamic language. And also, if anti-Semitism would also only be imported from outside, how can we explain that it's so difficult for religious leaders, Muslim religious leaders across the world, and especially in Europe, to oppose anti-Semitism? Because in most cases, these ideas are not condemned by the religious official authorities.
Okay, these are two questions. Yeah, for answering the first question, I hope you allow me to be academic. Yeah, remember, well, I was academic all over the time, but I try to soften my academic arguments to make them politically clear. But you remember when I referred to the things that I like in Germany, I mentioned Max Weber. Max Weber is the godfather of sociology. Yeah? And Max Weber looks at social phenomena. How do we study social phenomena, social and political phenomena? So Judeophobia is a phenomenon, not only in ideology, and also anti-Semitism is also a phenomenon. How can we study that? Yeah? And Max Weber has developed the term type. There's a type. And a type exists in an abstract manner, like you say, anti-Semitism is a type. What is anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism is A, B, C, and so on. Yeah, and Max Weber says types do exist in sociological thinking, pure, but in reality they are not pure. So now, applying this thinking of Max Weber of the type to Judeophobia and anti-Semitism, so there is no pure Judeophobia and there is no pure anti-Semitism. In reality, they could switch in one another. Yeah. So that's the answer of the first question. The second question about the Muslim leaders who fail to combat anti-Semitism in the Islamic diaspora. Up to my knowledge, I was there and I was listening to preachers, and I was as an unwanted person in many mosques. Yeah, and when they speak Turkish, when they speak Arabic, they promote anti-Semitism, and they do not teach the Muslims listening to them into a better, more tolerant, anti-Semitism-free Islam. So the problem with the imams, this is throughout Europe, with exceptions. One great exception is Dalil Bakr, is the imam of the mosque in Paris. He's my friend. When he speaks, he says what he thinks. But there are many imams who engage in doublespeak. When they speak with you as unbeliever, they speak a different language than when they would speak with me. Yeah? So this is, and many German goodwill, so good bench, many German goodwill politicians, when they dialogue with Muslim leaders, they do not understand them. Give you one example. Yeah, DITIB is the arm of the AKP and Erdogan in Germany. Yeah, and I know this is my knowledge based on research. They are against integration. They want the Turks living in Germany to be Turks, first Turks, second Turk, third Turk, and to be used as an instrument of Turkish foreign policy in Germany, as a leverage. Yeah, but when they speak with Mrs. Nahles last year, when she was Minister for Family, they convinced her that they are engaged in integration. And the Ministry of Family, Bundesministerium für Familie, they gave the DITIB annually 8 million euro to support integration. But with this money, they were undermining integration. Yeah? And German politicians do not get that. You say, you never get it. Yeah? Okay.
So, Laura. Laura.
So this is a question, what does anti-Semitism look like in Turkey? It's a personal question. I live there. And so I'm sort of curious. I live in the middle of Turkey in a small village, and I have started an NGO helping the Syrian refugee children. And so what does the anti-Semitism look like?
When I lived in Turkey, I lived in Ankara and Istanbul in the 90s. Yeah, I used also to travel and see there are two Turkeys. Yeah, there's a Kemalist Turkey. It is Ankara, Istanbul, and Izmir, and maybe some more, and rural Turkey. Yeah, and the Turks of Ankara and Istanbul are different Turks than the peasants, and maybe in some way. The rural Turks are lovely, yeah. They are pure. They are very generous and further coming, and there because anti-Semitism is intellectual. It's an intellectual attitude. They do not have the education probably to be anti-Semites. So this is first response. The second response. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I read in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung an American investigation about what do Turks think about non-Turks. And the Turks, they love themselves. Because the best people on earth are the Turks, 100%. Yeah, yeah. The people they dislike, 98% the Jews. The Germans, they dislike the Germans, 70%. Yeah, Americans, I think about was 85%. Yeah, so they were. It's very interesting, and I have the cut. If you get in touch with me, maybe I give you the reference. But you see, the Jews are on the top of the people Turks do not like, according to this investigation.
But if the anti-Semitism is intellectual, but anti-Semitism means wanting the extermination of Jews, how can one be just of the mind and not of the physical?
Actually, I mean, now to compare the rural Turks with the urban Turks, the protocols of the Zion protocols do exist in Turkish translation, and the rural people do not know what is protocol of Zion. They don't know what that is. They think maybe this is hamburger. Yeah, so it is an urban phenomenon. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
They don't like. I mean, I don't talk about Judaism. They don't like Israel.
Yeah.
I hear in the expats don't like Israel. I don't engage in conversation. There's no point. There's no argument. I mean, it's just that's all it will be. It's an argument.
Okay.
But
it's a disease, and it has. I don't know how to deal with it, but the disease is there. Yeah, it's a disease.
Thank you. So Harold, and then.
Okay.
No, Harold. No.
Two things. One,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to call anti-Semitism a disease because sometimes people can't help catching diseases.
Okay.
But you can help being anti-Semitic.
Remember, may I just interrupt you? You say I'm a Syrian, and I said Syrian refugees are poor people running off to save their lives. In Syria, you cannot survive. They come with a disease to Germany, but they did not catch it by free will. They just got it. So I'm agree. We are in agreement.
Being biased, like drinking liquor or something, you can avoid anti-Semitism. You decide to be anti-Semitic.
But if you grow in a culture which is anti-Semitic, you adopt it unwillingly. Yeah.
Yeah, but you decide what you're going to keep.
Yeah, you must be a professor like you are. Yeah.
But here's my question. Here's my question. in your hierarchy of being, I would say, when you were talking about in Islam, you talked about Muslims, then you talked about Jews and Christians, and then you had a category of
Unbelievers.
Where's the infidel? Where's the infidel?
Infidels, the unbelievers.
So an
Kafirun.
infidel and an unbeliever, that's the same term? Or?
Yeah. But you see, this is good that you're asking me. You have moderate, tolerant Muslims, and you have militant, intolerant Muslims, and you have educated and uneducated Muslims. If you are an educated Muslim, so you know this is Islamic theology. A Christian and a Jew is not an infidel. They are dhimmi. Infidel is the word for infidel in Arabic, or this is in all languages of Islam. Kafir. Kafir is an infidel. But kafir, a Jew and a Christian is not a kafir, according to Islamic theology. They are dhimmi. Yeah.
So when the jihad then is against infidels,
Yeah.
why are you fighting? Why would you want to fight Jews and Christians then?
No, actually the Quran does not ask to fight Jews as a, no. And there's the ideal and there's a reality.
Oh.
The ideal is what I'm telling you, and the reality was, what is your name? Yeah.
Rami.
Muhammad?
Rami.
Rami was talking about the reality. Yeah, there's different. But the model is like this: you are Christian and you're living in Syria as an Islamic society. You get minority rights. Yeah.
You will be dhimmi.
You be dhimmi. Yeah. You can go to your church or to your synagogue, and you can live you can live up to your religion, but you have to pay extra tax. Yeah. So this is discriminate by standard of today. If you pay a tax that I do not pay, this is discrimination. So I mean, Islam. I mean, to sum up, Islam provides only Christians and Jews with the right of protected minorities. Actually, dhimmi means protected minority. Yeah, but a kafir has no right. You fight against the kafirun. Kafirun is the plural. Yeah.
In contemporary period.
Excuse me, can everybody please listen to the question?
Question? Yeah.
Islamic anti-Semitism in contemporary periods is so connected with anti-Zionism and anti-Israel.
Yeah.
How do you find the relationship between them? And in what degree anti-Zionism and anti-Israel mean anti-Semitism?
Okay, so this is a left wing. This is not from you, but in a European left, anti-Semitism is refuted. Say this is not anti-Semitism. This is a critique on Israel and critique on Zionism. Now, I am an Arab. Arabic is my mother tongue. And I lived in an Arab country, and you support me. In Arabic, Yehudi is Jew, and Sahyuni is Zionist. But in the daily language, Sahyuni and Jew are synonymous. So every Jew is Sahyuni, yeah? And every Sahyuni is a Jew. So this is a game, and when the left-wing people bring the argument, this is not against Jews, this is against Zionism, the only thing I can do like this. And you see, in Islam, there's something. There are many wonderful things in Islam. Yeah, the most wonderful thing in Islam that I like is flexibility. Like when I lived in Senegal, Islam in Senegal is Senegalese. Yeah, so Islam can be flexible. And the second nice thing in Islam is the distinction between jahl and ilm. Jahl means ignorance, and ilm has knowledge. Yeah. And you see, in Islam, if you want to insult a person in Islamic terms, you call this person jahil. Jahil means unknowledgeable, ignorant. Yeah? And there are many people in the West who are ignorant about Islam, and they talk with an authority. Yeah? And they say, the only thing you can do is to say, I regret your jahl. But they do not understand it. Yeah? Jahl means, this in Islam, is like kafir is something very bad, but jahl is as, but, yeah, okay.
Every time you say that word, my South African friend is turning, their stomach is turning. All right.
No, because, I mean, in Islam, knowledge is above everything. Knowledge.
In South Africa, that word has another meaning. Okay. The final question goes, you want to say something about, okay.
No, I'm not going to ask about that term.
Okay.
It's been difficult for me to pronounce it. You know that in South Africa, when you say kafir, that's
Kafir.
To Africans.
That's a bad word.
So when white people say kafirs, like now, you can really go to jail.
Yeah. But this is Islamic theology.
That you can say to a black South
No, but my dear, this is not me. This is Islamic theology.
I know that the evolution of these terms, I think they've been really, I think the evolution of some of these terms has been like exploited and misunderstood, but that's not what I wanted to raise. But I was just giggling as you were saying it.
Okay.
Let's
see. So,
but what I want to know from you is the Islamic theology. You spoke about the Muslims being first class and then Christians and Jews second class.
Second class.
And I'm thinking, is this a global understanding? Because I grew up in South Africa with Muslims. I do not. We see each other as South Africans. I'm not saying that there's no double speak. I'm not saying that there isn't. But we relate, probably because maybe we have not had, at least for now, jihadism.
Yeah.
Maybe it's going there, but it's something
It's still in Nigeria. It's still far from Nigeria to South Africa. So
Cape Town, there's a big issue.
For me, listening to all of this is quite, it's making me now look futuristic in terms of maybe what could happen in South Africa, because I can sit here with a Hindu South African, a Muslim, a Jewish South African. It's not a big deal. Like you don't have what? Overt hatred? That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah, then you are dealing with good Muslims. They are dealing with good Muslims.
You don't have stereotypes about
Yeah,
each other,
yeah.
which is a separate issue. But I'm talking about hostility. Charles spoke about yesterday in Iran, when you are Jewish, when you go to a shop, you put the
Jews are impure.
yes, and then when it's raining, and, we're not there yet. But I know you've been to South Africa, so maybe I can.
I only the chocolate face of South Africa. Yeah?
You know what?
The chocolate face, yeah. And the chocolate face is Mandela. Yeah? And I finish maybe with this. Yeah, you see, one of my authorities, and I never met him in person, is Karl Popper. Yeah, Karl Popper, again a Jew, a Viennese Jew who fled, and when he was fleeing, he wrote the two volumes, The Open Society and Its Enemies. And I like this book so much. It's for me like a Bible of democracy and freedom. And I apply the term open society to Islam, and I say you have Islamist Islam, you have intolerant Islam, you have intolerant Islam, but there's also an open Islam. And I am a Reform Muslim, and I think there are good Muslims and bad Muslims. And so do not stereotype Islam. There is an open Islam. You know what happened? There are two kinds of people in Germany, especially in Germany. I know because I work all over the world, but it's never happened to me any place in Germany. Either say I am Islamophobic, yeah, because I don't like militant Islam. This is Islamophobia. But when I say something nice about Islam, I say there is an open Islam. There is one, I don't want to mention the name. I was accused of being the fifth colonist Islam. Yeah, I am the fifth fifth column of Islam. So I try to Islamize Germany from the back door, and I say there is a good Islam, and in fact I want to Islamize Germany. This is so I am the fifth column of Islam in Germany. Yeah. So at the same time, so you see how strong do I have to be? I have to live with two images. I am the enemy of Islam. I'm spreading Islamophobia, and I am the fifth colony of Islam, spreading Islam with the mask of a tolerant Muslim. Yeah? So who am I? I don't know. Okay, thank you.